Hello everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Max AC channel. Since this is the first episode of this show, I thought I'd start off with a little background. This series is inspired by something that I've been doing for the past year or so on Snapchat. I have a story on there where I post pictures of meals that I've made, and I call that story the AC channel. My main motivation for posting to this was to inspire people to try to cook more and try to cook the meals that I've shown. So, I thought as an expansion of this, I would start recording myself cooking the meals that I make and post it to this channel. Thus, we have this show, the Max AC channel. So, for this first episode, I thought that I would start with a pretty simple recipe, Japanese curry. This is a meal that I enjoy cooking because it requires minimal effort and is pretty difficult to mess up. Specifically, you'll only need 5 ingredients. Curry paste, obviously. I have 2 types here, hot and medium hot. If your curry comes with instructions, don't worry about that. Just follow mine and you should be good to go. You'll also need some potatoes. You'll need about 10 small potatoes. I've got this big bag here, but I'll only be using those if I run out of these. Carrots. I use the whole bag of these. Onions. You'll want to use about 2 to 3 large onions. And your meat of choice. I typically use stew meat, but it's your curry, so make it your way. In addition to these ingredients, I also enjoy throwing in some secret ingredients to add to the complexity of the flavor, and I'll show you guys those when they come up. In terms of prep, all you need to do is cut up your vegetables and meat, of course, if you don't have it pre-cut. When cutting your onions, don't cut them like this. Fun fact, by cutting it like this, you cause the lacrimatory factor synthase to be released in the air, which is what causes you to cry. Instead, what I like to do is cut off the stem of the onion to make a flat surface, then cut it in half and then cut the root out and cut using the lines in the onions as a guide. I recommend cutting the onions first since we will saute them for about 15 to 20 minutes, during which you can cut the carrots and potatoes. This sauteing step isn't strictly necessary, but I think that the flavor that caramelized onions bring to the dish is definitely worth the extra time. So, to saute the onions, start by putting the pan on medium to medium-low heat and melt about 1 tablespoon of butter. Wait until the butter is completely melted and put the onions in. You want to hear that immediate sizzle, so don't be impatient like me and wait a little bit longer. Once they are in, let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes or until they brown. Don't worry about separating the onions right away unless they are really big chunks. They will loosen up as they cook. But again, I was impatient. My onions were looking a little dry, so I added about a tablespoon or so of olive oil. You of course can add more butter or any other oil substitutes, but the oil was already liquid, so I went with that. You want to make sure that you stir them often to prevent them from burning, but not too much to where they don't brown. Also, this isn't strictly necessary, but I season my onions about halfway through with some salt and pepper. Now for the potatoes, I recommend using Yukon Gold potatoes, mostly because their skin is pretty soft, so you don't need to peel them. You just need to chop them up into bite-sized pieces. Plus they're pretty small already, so cutting them is pretty simple. Just cut them into quarters and they should be good to go. You can, of course, use any potato you want, but that's up to you. Make sure to keep stirring your onions during this time. You don't want to have them burning. For the carrots, not sure why mine were so watery, but if that's the case for you, just take a paper towel and dry them up a bit. I recommend using baby carrots again because of their size, and it's pretty easy to cut into bite-sized pieces, plus no peeling again, so that's always a win in my book. And remember, keep stirring your onions. Let's check back on the onions now. Here are my onions after about 20 minutes. I probably could have gone a little bit longer, but I already burned them a little because I wasn't watching them, so I thought that it was good enough. You could also add some sugar to aid in the caramelization, but it's not necessary. I didn't add some this time also since the dish will have some additional sweetness added in later. Okay, so now that that's done, remove the onions from the pot and then add about 1 tablespoon of butter or oil. Test the pot with a piece of meat to make sure that it will properly sear, and then put your meat in. As you can probably tell, this pot is a little bit small for the amount of meat that I put in. You want to have room to properly sear all the sides of the meat to lock in the juices. You can see here that I didn't do that properly, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. We're not cooking the meat, so don't worry about the timing. Just try to sear as many sides as possible. Next, add your carrots, potatoes, and onions into the same pot and mix them all around so everything is evenly distributed. Then, add just enough water to cover the mix and turn the heat up to medium-high. While waiting for it to boil, scoop out any of the scum that floats to the top. Doing this makes the curry less gray, making it more visually appealing. Once it starts boiling, turn the heat to low, cover, and simmer for about 15 minutes or until the potatoes and carrots are soft. Once that time is up, check your vegetables with a fork, and if they're good to go, it's time for the curry blocks. Break them up and add the blocks into the pot. Stir them in so that they melt and the liquid should start to thicken right away. Once they are completely melted, it's time for the secret ingredient, chocolate.
Did you say chocolate?
That's right, chocolate.
Chocolate? Chocolate! 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 Chocolate!
More specifically, I used dark bittersweet chocolate chips. Though you could probably throw in a chocolate bar if that's what you have. The reason why I add chocolate is that it adds a unique earthy sweetness to the dish that I think elevates the savory flavor of the curry. I accidentally put in a little bit too much, so it was tasting a little bit too sweet. To counterbalance this, I added another secret ingredient to add a bit of acidity. And that ingredient is ketchup.
Ketchup. Ketchup?
That's right, ketchup. Once you mix all that together and it's to your liking taste-wise, it's pretty much done and you can start eating it now. But if you want it to taste even better, I recommend letting it simmer for another hour or so. Yes, I know that that's a long time to wait, but if you forgot to make rice like I did, it serves as the perfect amount of time to do said thing. If you are going to let it simmer for the hour, make sure to add a little bit more water just to make sure it doesn't burn. After an hour of waiting, as you can see here, the curry is a lot more thick and it has a glossy sheen to it and it looks very good. Once your rice is done and you've waited the 1 hour, it's as simple as scooping the rice and curry on a plate and it's time to dig in. Now that was delicious. One thing with curry is that when you make it, you're going to have leftovers. So I recommend letting it cool for about 30 minutes or so and putting it in some sort of container. I actually don't recommend putting them in these containers as curry stains them pretty easily, but when I went to clean them this time, it came out pretty easily, so I don't know. And the only thing that I hate about making curry is the mess that it makes. But if you invite your friends over for some curry, you could maybe ask them for some help with cleaning up, and you won't have as much leftovers. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. In the comments below, let me know how it went if you decided to make it, and let me know if there's anything you want me to make next. Like the video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to this channel for more episodes of the Max AC channel. And remember, if you want to stay cool in the kitchen, turn your AC to the max and watch the Max AC channel.